I'm a guest on my show today with my husband Gary, who's making his famous meatballs.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a recipe that we use a lot in our catering and have used it actually for about 30 years when we used to live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a recipe that a friend of ours, when we used to be in a card club back in Cedar Rapids, used to make, and we loved it, and we share this with a lot of people. Just not our secret sauce.
Not the secret barbecue sauce. That is family, well, that's a card club recipe from 30 years ago. So whether people, if they can contact our friends in Cedar Rapids, they might give it to you, but for the time being, we're just going to keep it secret here at the Slice of Heaven kitchen.
Okay, so we're going to get started. So Gary, this is the part I really don't like, is making the meatballs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I love doing it.
And he likes to do that.
I just get right into this
Okay,
stuff.
So for one recipe, which makes about 90 meatballs, you will have 3 to 4 pounds of hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We actually have made half of it already, so I'm still going to give you what the full recipe would be, but Gary will just be putting in half.
Right.
Okay, so I'll start with 3 to 4 pounds of hamburger, 2 eggs.
Okay. Pour the eggs in.
1 large can evaporated milk.
I'm going to steal this here.
Okay.
Clean this out.
You can beat your eggs before you put those in. 1 large can evaporated milk.
Milk.
2 cups of quick oatmeal. So it's going to be your not the slow cook.
That's the binder. That holds it together, so you can roll it and it doesn't fall apart.
Right.
Or the meatball doesn't get too hard and dry on you. You gotta have a binder in there to make it hold together. Basically.
Okay, finely chopped onion, and that can be about like a medium onion for 3 to 4 pounds of ground beef.
And you can add more onion. It depends on your family and whoever you're making them for. If they like more onions, you can add more to it, or less.
The more onion we find in the meatballs and in the sauce really give it a lot of extra flavor. Mm-hmm. Okay, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, a half teaspoon or 1/2 tablespoon of garlic salt. And this is actually garlic powder that we have. We often use powder instead of salt. And then Gary likes to just throw in some cayenne pepper.
Cayenne pepper is my favorite source of hot, spicy flavoring. Put a little bit of that in, not too much. Again, it's all according to your
taste. And then a 1/2 tablespoon of pepper, and we like to have grated pepper. That seems to give it a little bit more of a sharper.
Yep, gives it a
fresh taste.
Fresh cracked pepper taste. Okay.
So Gary always liked playing in mud puddles and things like that. So
yes.
So he enjoys just mixing all of this by hand. And of course, when you're doing this, you take off your rings and so that you're not contaminating your food as you're doing this. And when he makes the meatballs, he can kind of tell whether he needs a little bit more milk added or a little bit more
Sometimes you might
oatmeal.
put a little more oatmeal in. All depends.
So you kind of get the feel. When you make as many meatballs as you've made over the years, you pretty much know, like other items that you make, how things should feel.
And the same with when I start rolling the meatballs, the same thing is you'll get a feel for the size that you want. And if you make them too large, it's almost too much for a person to eat. So I like to make them probably about the size of a ping pong ball. That's how the ping pong ball, the golf ball size, somewhere in that range makes a nice size hors d'oeuvre meatball.
And we typically, when we serve these, we'll just serve them and use toothpicks for our guests or for customers that want meatballs for one of their appetizers.
Yep. Okay.
So is that good?
I think I have it mixed up. So I'm going to go wash my hands now and get ready for rolling meatballs. And in the meantime, you can show how to make the sauce.
Okay. The recipe calls for 1 recipe of sauce, but typically with 3 to 4 pounds of hamburger, we'll make at least 1.5 recipes of sauce. I'm going to make 2 recipes today, and as Gary said, this is kind of a little family secret, so I'm not going to tell you exactly what the measurements are, just what we put in. So then you can kind of figure out what you want to do. So we have ketchup, and any brand of ketchup works. And when I come to the end of the ketchup in a bottle, so that you don't waste any of the ketchup, you add some extra water into your ketchup. We're going to add water, brown sugar. Again, onion to taste. The more onion you have, the tastier and more flavorful it's going to be. Pull the onion out. And liquid smoke, that's the last ingredient. We're going to stir this around, and then we're just going to cook it on the stove top and basically bring it to a boil and let it boil for just a little bit, just so that all of the ingredients have a chance to get well, mixed in together. And you can always add more water if you think that it's thicker than what you want. When I double the recipe, I don't double the brown sugar. So again, it's really to taste. The more brown sugar, the sweeter the meatballs are going to be. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the stove while Gary is mixing those meatballs, and I'm going to just bring this to a boil. You have to kind of watch when you're cooking your sauce. So you want to, when you brings it to a boil, you want to make sure that it doesn't get too hot and scorch the bottom of your sauce in the pan. I think one thing that we tend to find is we have to be careful when we put the sauce on meatballs, that if it's too thick, sometimes by the end of an event, it just, I don't know how you describe that.
The barbecue, the moisture in the sauce will start evaporating, and when it sits for an hour or two in a chafer dish, it'll start evaporating the water out of it, and it becomes very pasty and syrupy. So you want to start with a good mixture that's liquid enough, if you will. Not too liquidy that the meatballs are swimming in the sauce, but you want to have enough moisture in there so it doesn't get syrupy at the end of the event.
What we also find is they freeze really well, so we'll make them ahead. Sometimes if we've made too many for an event, but we want to make something for our own family, then we can make them, and we bake them and then freeze them and then make some extra sauce. So then when we reheat them, then we can add the extra sauce. When you get them out of the freezer, bring them, thaw them in your refrigerator so that you don't have to worry about them spoiling or any issues with food,
and then
issues like that.
And then probably after you thaw them in the refrigerator, after they've been cooked, like Ruth just said, you probably put them at about 300. Don't put them at 350. 350 will burn the tops of the meatball if they're not covered in sauce. So you want to put it at about 300 degrees.
And if you have a convection oven, which lots of you do, then bake it about 25 degrees cooler. When we actually bake them the first time, you bake at 350 for 45 minutes to an hour. And you can kind of test them when they are well heated through. Test one of the ones in the middle. Obviously the ones around the perimeter will be cooked first, so test them and make sure that they're done. Bring them out, let them cool for a little bit, and then put them in your refrigerator. Again, we're always concerned that we don't have any issues with food safety issues with your meat, but we've never had any problems with these. We did find when we just did an event not too long ago for one of our customers, they wanted a spaghetti or linguine with meatballs. So we used this meatball recipe, made them about twice the size, and then we made a marinara sauce. So you can also use them for spaghetti and meatballs or linguine and meatballs, and make them larger if you wish.
And if you're going to have an Italian dish, you want to use Italian sausage.
Exactly.
And we prefer the hot, again, it's a personal preference, I prefer the hot, spicy Italian sausage that you can buy in the grocery store. again, to everybody's taste and flavor. So.
Okay, I'm going to check on that sauce. It should be almost ready, I think. Okay, and I believe the sauce is ready. So that was bubbling. So we are going to, I'll just let you.
Let me wash up here.
Okay, I guess I can probably manage this too.
Can you manage that?
Yeah, so we're just going to pour them on. Have your meatballs covered in the sauce. You can kind of stir the, so you can do this. Okay. You want to have all your meatballs covered. But this is actually enough for double this size, or double this amount of meatballs. And as they're baking, they're going to, bubble up, and some of the moisture will come out of the hamburger. And
just kind of shake them a little bit to get the sauce all the way around all of them.
And as you can see, when you make these, like you had started to only put 4 in a row.
You did.
But then when you add that sauce, it really opens them up, so you can, have more. So
We're all set to put them in the oven.
Meatballs to put in the oven. Okay, so we have one set done and ready to try. I probably want to use that to stir that around, don't we?
There we go.
Okay, and when we serve for our, that didn't work very well.
That's why you wear aprons.
Okay, when we serve our guests at different events, we have tongs, and then we will have toothpicks. But you can add some extra sauce on there if you wish. And you can see in this pan we really have plenty of sauce. And there we have Gary's famous meatballs, barbecue meatballs. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Slice of Heaven. It's always fun cooking with you, of course.
Of course.
And
I get to eat. I get to have a sample. That's the best part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So until next time, happy cooking.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's enough. And no more outtakes.
Just mind your own business.
This is my business. This is your business, but it's my business. Okay. We'll start. We'll carry on. I bet she started already.
Well, she probably did.
She probably has. Yeah. Okay, let's begin.
Okay.